Hello everyone, it's Hump Day History Wednesday, once again brought to you by the Hormel Historic Home and the Moore County Historical Society. Today we are here at the Hormel Historic Home and we're utilizing our kitchen and we'll be featuring the history of lefse making, but we'll wait a little bit till we get people to sign on. We just thought we'd hang out here in the event center of the Hormel Home. Normally we'd probably be prepping and setting up for lots of holiday parties this time of year, but as you know, we're closed based on the governor's efforts to stop the spread of COVID. So it is decorated, it is pretty, but there's not very many people here, if any. So you get a little glimpse of the corridor decorations, which include woodland themed, as you see there. Red and black and animals, there's owls, there's bears, there's squirrels. But that's not what today is all about. We're just, like I said, giving you a little glimpse of the Hormel Historic Home and the beauty that's here despite the closure. And then we're going to go in and talk to Jamie from the Historical Society as she teaches us about the history of lefse making. And then we'll also see a demonstration by Jim Braaten and hear about his connection to lefse making during the holidays. I'm not sure if it was a connection by choice or a connection by request, but here we go.
If anybody, again, just a reminder, if anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to type them in the field below and we'll try to answer them for you. But we are coming up on, we'll give you a sneak peek of lefse demonstrator. Wait, Jim. Yay!
Yay! We wish we could send samples, through Facebook.
I mean, I've already had a sample and I can say that it was pretty
Jamie, you
delicious.
had 2 samples.
I had 2 samples. Okay, I'm hungry. It's lunchtime. Yeah. I have no shame. I don't care. All right, well, welcome everybody. As always, since it's, we got to get a little history in there somehow. I have just a little bit, it's not super in-depth, but a little bit of history about lefse, and especially the lefse that we all know and love today. So first, the predecessor to lefse, I guess, it's really not anything like the lefse that we're going to see in a little bit. But there was a round flatbread introduced in Norway about 250 years ago by the Vikings. It was a flour-based round, almost like a cracker, and in reading about it, it actually reminded me about like Civil War era hardtack type thing. They cooked it over, let me back up a little bit. So flour-based, egg yolks, buttermilk, cooked over a hot stone or an open fire so that it could be stored. It was like a cracker, it was hard, and it could be stored for a long time, and they would stack it up, and then to eat it, you would dunk it in water and then let it sit between like 2 damp cloths till it softened up enough that you could eat it. And it said that women would travel from home to home and village to village to make enough so that people could have enough for the winter months. It was also good if you had a long sea journey coming up. You could bring it with you as a long-term food source. And it was also considered a good way to store wheat that might otherwise not survive the long winter season. The potato-based lefse wasn't really known until the potato was introduced in Norway around 1750 by traveling priests. And not tomatoes. Oh man, I should have had a third
You
one.
are hungry today.
I am, let me tell you. No, potatoes did really well in the Norwegian climate and soil. And they were also an excellent source of vitamin C and helped combat scurvy, so yay! Which was a big problem in Norway at the time. And so they started incorporating potato into a lot of Norwegian dishes because it did so well. It was such a good growing crop there. And this was also when different variations of lefse started to appear as well. There's ones that are more savory, more sweet. There's some that are thicker, more like cake-like, less of a flatbread or a tortilla resembling kind. And so around this time also is the Norway suffered the same potato famine that Ireland did. in the mid 1800s, which is also when a lot of Norwegian immigrants started traveling to North America and, surprise, surprise, settled here in and around lovely Minnesota, where the potato also grew quite well. And that's when the kind of soft potato lefse that we are more familiar with really took hold here in the United States. It's brought here by the immigrants, and it's so you might almost say this is kind of a Norwegian American tradition, not just strictly a Norwegian thing. And I also read, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe have you heard this? I've heard that the combination of lefse and lutefisk is strictly a Norwegian Minnesotan tradition. They did not eat it together in Norway. I might be angering the masses right now.
Is anybody chiming
Anybody
in
heard
to
that?
let us know if that's true or not?
No.
We will welcome your comments.
Yes, we do. Bring it on, please.
Bring the discussion.
Potato lefse also kind of really grew in popularity during World War I, which is one of my favorite time periods to study, when people were encouraged to eat potatoes rather than grain because they needed the grain for the war effort. So the lefse became really popular here. And it's enjoyed in many different ways, not just with lutefisk, as I already mentioned. Today we're enjoying it with butter and sugar, which is delicious. Also jam and cream, salmon, cottage cheese. You can, I don't know, it's pretty versatile. I think you can eat it with just about anything. So with that, that's just my very brief little dip into the history of lefse and our wonderful...
Show us some of your
Oh, well,
things we
these
have.
are just a few things that we have in the collection at the Historical Society. This is a really massive grooved lefse rolling pin. And it's my understanding that the grooves help eliminate some of the potential air pockets that can appear in the dough. And then I also have one of these ricers, which are used to prepare the potatoes when you're making the dough. So, and I think Jim's gonna talk a little bit about how to prep. He did some prep work for us the day before, so I mean, he's really dedicated. So, he can share more of how these are used in the process.
So we're gonna...
Take it away.
Oh, gee, thanks. Well, appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I am not the be-all, end-all of lefse roll. And I know somebody out there is gonna say, that's not how I do it, or that's not necessarily right, but lefse is like anything else. There's 100 different ways you can do things. What I do, I mean, this is what has worked for me over the years. I started out, I don't know, 20, 25 years ago helping my mom. And then when she broke a wrist, I figured if we were gonna have lefse that holiday, somebody had to pick up the slack. So then I started doing it more. And over the years, I've helped, excuse me, roll at St. Olaf Church when they prepare for Scandinavian Day. And also the last couple of years, I've done some for the Historical Society for their fall harvest and their Christmas in the county. I brought a few things along, just things that I have that I use. This is my version of my potato ricer. It's a little heavier duty than the one that Jamie had. My original one was like that. This is one of the Lefse sticks, and the Lefse stick is usually curved on one side and it's flat on the bottom. So as you pick up the lefse off the board, you can get underneath it and pick it up with that. This is today's version more of the big rolling pin. A little smaller, also this one spins on the handles where that one, the whole thing had to roll. The one I'm using today is more of a corrugated, so it's got the little cross cuts in it. I just prefer that one. This one used to squeak. Yesterday when I started, the way I do it, I figure the recipe is 8 cups of rice potatoes, a stick of butter, a cup of cream, 4 teaspoons of salt, and 4 teaspoons of sugar. Doesn't tell you like any other Norwegian recipe of, is the 4 cups or 8 cups of potatoes, is that packed or is it like fluffy? I found 5 pounds of potatoes basically comes up with about a recipe for me. So I peeled and boiled 5 pounds of potatoes, then I ran them through the ricer, added the butter and the cream and the salt and the sugar, and put them in the trusty old mixer and let it whip up. Packed them up overnight in the fridge, and then this morning when I got up, I added, excuse me, the flour to it. That recipe that I use calls for about 2.5 cups of flour, and that really depends on how wet the potato might be. So sometimes it might be a little more, a little bit less. It kind of goes by feel for me. So I've started out, I got 3 balls here, and I always flour the board in the mixer, or the rolling pin. I found that a little strainer helps. I don't get flour all over the whole house that way, but it does go all over the whole house. Lightly flour, and then I just brush it in and spread it around. Then start with one of the balls. This is the scoop that I use in making my ball. It's a food service scoop, and this is a 2-ounce scoop. So basically, basically comes out so it's a rather well-rounded scoop. This one might be a little bit big, but that's about the size of the ball that I start with. And I'll get all the balls ready when I add the flours to them, put them on a jelly roll pan and slide them in the fridge. And then I only take out about 3 or 4 balls at a time, because it's easier dough for me to work with if it's cold. So I start with a round ball. A good friend of mine, and also the gal who made my mask. I'm not Norwegian, I'm Swedish, with the Dala horse and the Swedish dancers and the Swedish flag, but still has that Scandinavian touch to it. But Vern Bishop told me, if you want to end up with something round, you start with something round. So I get my ball good and round, make a small circle, almost a patty, place it in the middle, and then I just roll it out like you're rolling a pie crust almost. And I keep moving around in circles. I get out about that size, then I flip it once, and just keep rolling out to the edge. I'm not a walking advertisement for the Bethany company, but all my equipment seems to be that. The grill is, the pins, but they have the markings on the pastry board. And so I usually find that I can work it out to about the 14-inch size. And it doesn't have to be round. You can't taste the round in Lefse. Oh,
Too wild.
Oh, no.
what fell? Look at what you did now. See?
George and Lillian were German. Maybe that's why.
It's doing the Lefse in the Hormel home. Get out.
The ghosts of George and Lillian are among us.
Well, but for me, thin is better. I don't pack my lutefisk in it or anything and roll it up like some people do. But I usually end up, see it folded back in on itself again. Now I'll have a funny mark as it cooks. Flat side on the bottom and just pick it up. And then place it on the grill.
Is that hard to learn how to unroll it like that?
It just takes some practice. You can see on this side where it flipped on itself, shows up a little bit. Now my griddle is,
It's starting to steam.
yeah, it steams. It has a cool spot on it. I'm not even sure which side it is, but I always have to give it a little turn as it gets going so that it's kind of cooking all around.
So how long have we been on already? It's quick.
It goes fast. I want to get it so that you start seeing the little round spots that are coming up. There were a few on, that must have been the cooler side, more like this. Ooh, hot too.
Did you oil that pan or anything?
No.
What
No.
temperature's your pan at?
Well, depends on the electricity in the building you're at. Mine's pretty much close to 500 right now. And usually between 450 and 5.
Ooh, look at her bubble there.
She's bubbling a little bit. So I just kind of beat the bubbles down. Another one is like this little roller. You can use this to take over, but it goes faster on the second side. The spots get a little bit different, a little bigger. And then between 2 impeccably clean flour sack towels, and then I use wax paper in the middle and put the Lefse in there and just keep it covered while I cool.
It smells good.
And and I will do the entire batch, which usually I end up with between 2.5 to 3 dozen. And I'll just keep stacking all the way, part way through. I'll turn it into itself so that it steams back and forth. That way if something gets a little crusty around an edge, it kind of steams that edge out, so you have a nice soft piece of Lefse when you're done. So, should we try another one, see if I can do a better job this
Somebody
time?
asked what temperature the grill was, and I think you said 500.
Between 450 and 500 is what I usually run mine at.
And
So-
how many balls did you get out of your recipe? You get 2 dozen?
Out of the recipe, I usually get 2.5 to 3 dozen.
If someone asks why wax paper?
Well, I don't know if that was my mother's idea or if I came up with that one, but it helps hold the moisture in between rather than going out into the cloth. And it kind of just keeps that steaming effect going as it cools. Something I do and it works for me, so. You
And would
mean
you-
somebody's even watching?
Oh, yeah.
We got like
I
15.
apologize to those watching the Hormel Historic Homes feed. For some reason, the video ended partway through the first one we did. So Jim, if you don't mind just talking again what you're going, or what you're doing.
Sure.
For the group that's on our channel.
So I lightly flour the board and then also the pin. Start out with as round a ball as you can make in your hand. Then I kind of flatten it out into a disc because if you want to end up with something round, you start out with something round. So I just start it in the middle of the board and start rolling out until, you know, I got a good 5 to 6 inch circle. Then I do give it a flip. I know people who get it bigger and flip it and things, but this has worked for me, so this is kind of how I do it.
What do you do with all the Lefse you make, Jim?
Well, most of it I donate to the Historical Society the last couple of years for their fall harvest and then Christmas in the county. Then I have some friends who call and ask if I'll make for them. So I've done quite a bit over the years. This year I'm doing a little bit less, just strictly because I'm getting a little bit older. You know, I done a lot of rolling at church for Scandinavian Day at St. Olaf. And between Scandinavian Day and their ordered day, we would usually do 600 to 650 pounds of potatoes. And that would be about 300 dozen Lefse. And with the pandemic this year, they of course didn't do either event. So that means there's about 300 dozen Lefse short in the city of Austin.
People are sad.
Someone asked the question, tell them why the rolling pin sock.
By the rolling pin what?
What about the rolling pin sock?
Rolling pin sock? Well, probably just so you don't get it all stuck up in the little grooves and everything. It's the way it was taught.
It's just because.
Just because.
Brenda chimed in and said, nice and thin.
Is that key to good Lefse, is thin Lefse?
For me it is. I've seen some that gets thick. Some people like it just barely colored. Others like it burnt black spots almost. Probably like a good steak. Some like rare and some like well done.
Well, I can attest that it's delicious.
Someone asked, does it ever stick together inside the wax paper?
No. It gets a little bit. You know, well, the other day, did it later in the day at home, and as I'm on my way upstairs to bed, I thought, oh my God, I didn't pack the Lefse, so I had to turn around, go down, and separate 3 dozen Lefse and put them in bags, so.
I mean, since
since you're not using like any oil or anything, it's not really sticky.
No, the flour
Yeah.
hasn't dried out.
So that's been about a minute on that side. I was timing.
Your timing, okay.
So about a 1 minute so far.
Debbie and Jeff Trimbo commented, Jim's Lefse is the best.
Thanks, guys.
Isadeo writes,
Oh.
your Lefse is beautifully created.
Look how pretty that is.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
After several years of making Lefse, I'm going to try the wax paper method. So someone learned something new.
Yay.
It's something that just seems to work for me. And I don't know if it's the steaming thing. Now, I know at church they just lay it all out between cotton sheets. And, you know, for me, the wax paper, because I don't have room to lay it all out on its own.
So you have to stack it.
So I stack it. See that? The second side, which is pretty well done.
So that was a total of about 2 minutes for the whole piece.
Yeah, it goes fast. And then when I do, if you get a little on the edge, as flour will build up. If it gets a little crunchy on one edge or a little thick, I will just take it and then turn it into itself so that the heat goes back and forth through the stack as it sits for the couple hours while it totally cools down, until you can fold it and put it into a Ziploc bag.
So how long will you leave it before you package it?
Well, I do it till the whole stack is cool, and that's probably 2.5 to 3 hours. And then usually I package it up in like a Ziploc style bag, half a dozen to a bag. So,
Sue, I'm probably gonna butcher your last name, but Jaeger says, hi, Jim.
oh, hi Sue.
And then Deanna asked, what's your favorite Lefse topping? Do you wanna get into that discussion? Here's what we have today. We have butter, brown sugar, and white sugar.
It depends on what I'm doing. If it's with Christmas dinner with meatballs and gravy and mashed potatoes and everything, I'll probably eat it just like a roll or a piece of bread. Just even plain, maybe a little butter on it. To get it too sweet after dinner, I've kind of become a brown sugar fan, because I'll do like one piece of brown sugar. But I know like nieces and nephews, they'll have like 8 pieces and put sugar on all of them, and usually white sugar. So, but I'm pretty plain, because I eat it more as an accompaniment with a meal, like a piece of bread or a roll or something. So.
Any other questions out there before we finish up for the day?
And as I said, I'm not the Lefse professional or anything. I'm just the guy who couldn't say no.
That's fine.
And we're so grateful for
Yes,
that.
we're very thankful. I'm just gonna kind of pan over some of these supplies again.
And then one thing, when I'm rolling, after about 3, 4, or 5, I use my little bench scraper vegetable pickup, and I go around the edge of the pan or the rolling board, because all that flour builds up as you roll, and that's what makes the edges crusty. So you scrape it all off, and then you start over with new flour again. So you just don't need all that crunchy buildup on it.
Yeah, just look how much flour we got. How many did we roll? Probably 4 or 5, I mean, before,
Oh,
since you scraped.
since I scraped, we just did 2.
2.
So that's why I do it after about 3 or 4 and kind of clean up the edge of the rolling surface. You can buy a real thin board. This board was made by one of the guys from St. Olaf Church. He made a bunch of them for the rolling closet at church. And there were a couple that they said they would sell, so I got myself a heavier board just so it's a little more sturdy than a real thin 1/4 inch thing, so.
So Jim, if we can't get fresh made Lefse from you, do you have a commercial brand that you recommend?
No.
No.
No!
No, you plan ahead and you get to St. Olaf Church for Scandinavian Day, or this year the pre-sale for the Historical Society, Because I think between fall harvest and last weekend, it was what, about 60 dozen between the two.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you
So-
made all that.
I made about 30,
Okay.
and
Artist Jensen
Artist
made a bunch
Jensen.
for us as well for the Historical Society.
yeah, so. And then you have to learn to say no, because he had me making sandbachels for that thing last week. So.
The sandbachels were delicious
So
though.
you're saying sandbachels are not gonna be our next demonstration?
Well, I'll tell you what, Norwegian Christmas goods are a one-shot thing. I mean, it's one sandbachel and press them into the tin, one kroomkake and flip the iron. Everything is one rosette at a time, so it's time consuming. So I'm afraid that, with today's world, younger people might not want to pick up this time consuming hobby, and some of these traditions may go away, but I'm a traditionalist.
Jim's keeping the tradition alive.
Yeah, even with my Swedish mask that Vern made for me. But so, Norwegian at heart.
Are there any other questions out there?
Brenda said butter or butter and brown sugar for her too, and she said great job. Deanna said, thanks for the Lefse demo. My husband introduced me to this ancient treat on a holiday visit to Minnesota. Can't go wrong with the classic butter and sugar.
That's right. Unless you put the lutefisk in it.
We lost Holly now.
Well, I've gone to a couple lutefisk dinners where there's been somebody in, the old Norwegian farmer at the end of the table will put the fish right in the lefse and eat it like a burrito, or, kind of a Norwegian burrito.
Norwegian burrito.
The Norwegian fish taco.
Yes. The original fish taco. The
There you
Vikings
go.
started it, so.
Awesome.
Okay, Amanda, where are we going next week?
Next week we are headed to 6 Mile Grove Lutheran Church near Lyle, Minnesota. And we have a little bit of a rumor that horsing around, Russ Lewinsky's horses might make an appearance that day. So tune in next week, Wednesday at noon, for Hump Day History on either the Hormel Historic Home Facebook page or the Moore County Historical Facebook page. And then if you miss us live, you can check out the Hormel Historic Home on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel now, and we're looking to get subscribers for that. So subscribe to it, and you can always watch another version of the video on there. So
Okay, thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks,
Have
everyone.
a great day.